Okay, welcome to the Leadership Development Accelerator. My name is Amber Morrison-Kaiser, and I've been in leadership for 20 plus years in healthcare specifically. I worked in hospitals, I worked in big clinics and small clinics and insurance companies. So I have a lot of experience. I worked in the front office, I worked in the billing office, but the majority of my time has been spent in leadership. Not only am I an active leadership coach, but I practice leadership for real. That's my real job. I'm a practice administrator, although it's part-time since I've started my own coaching business. I am currently a practicing leader. I started this because I was so tired of watching the hamster wheel of the leadership pipeline. I called it the leadership gap, and here's why. So the leadership pipeline goes like this. An individual contributor does fabulous work. They're great at their job, at their individual contributor job. And so they get promoted. I hate the word promoted, but they get shoulder tapped and promoted. Overnight, they're given a team and a title, and there's nothing in between. There's no training or education for how to lead people, for how to have hard conversations, lead people through change, conflict management. There's no education. And organizations just throw leaders into a leadership role and don't have without any preparation, and it's a disaster. I watch it happen over and over again. It's a tragedy, quite honestly. Some people are in the audience today because they have been victims of this, like I'm going to use the word victims here. So put a 1 in the chat if you have ever had a bad leader, and put a 2 in the chat if you have never had a bad leader. Okay, Pam, you've had a bad leader. I know all about that. Louise, you've had a bad leader. Molly, you've had a bad leader. George, you've had a bad leader. All right. So that tells the story. Every one of us has had a bad leader. Recently, I've flipped my script. So I started in this to find leaders who hadn't received any education, any training, any mentorship, and offered them help. I even did it for free. But what I learned is that leaders and Molly, I know you're a current leader, and Louise, I know you are too. But every leader that I have interviewed doesn't think they don't think that they need training and education. They believe that they have already arrived. I had 2 conversations in 1 week with C-suite level people. And I asked them 2 questions. How did you get into leadership? And one answered me and said, I was amazing at my work. I was amazing at what I did. And so I was the obvious choice to become supervisor. I was like, all right. And I said, what kind of training and education did you do? Excuse me. And she said, by the time that my organization offered it to me, I was so far up the org chart that I didn't need it. And that conversation really sticks out my mind because that's how it compounds. If we have people in the C-suite saying we don't need to provide leadership education and development because look at me, I did it without and I'm a great leader, then that dooms everyone under them, right? I had an epiphany a couple weeks ago, and I thought, okay, sitting leaders think they've arrived most, and I'm not talking about all because yes, every day is a school day for me too. Um, I want to get in with aspiring leaders and people who have had bad leadership. So I have kind of a two-pronged mission. First, I want to work with people who want to learn how to do leadership correctly. I call it the leadership development trifecta, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. I also want to be an advocate to change the trauma that is caused by untrained leaders. I spent an entire weekend 3 weeks ago watching HR case studies of um, people who would call in to an outside HR rep, and it would show the entire process from start to finish, and and every single case study I watched led back to leadership at some level. Untrained leaders, leaders who did not provide any clarity on expectations, leaders who um, didn't set boundaries, that I could go on and on. And so this is what motivates me is the unintentional harm created by leaders who have not been educated. Their um, leadership is a set of skills and behaviors that are not intuitive in any way. They're not intuitive in any way. I was going to start this workshop differently, but I have to tell you about my week. It is a case study in leadership. So this was a very bad, awful, no good week. It started with my daughter getting hit by another car, totaled her car, spent Sunday in the ER with her. Monday and Tuesday, things blew up at my work as a clinic administrator. I dealt with insurance company on the personal side and my daughter's healing on the personal side. And at work this week, I used every single leadership skill and behavior muscle that I have built over 20 years. I had employee conflict resolutions, hard conversations, what I call crucial conversations, where the emotional stakes are very high. I had to interview and onboard. I onboarded one person and I interviewed 5 people. I had to use my behavioral interviewing skills. There were a lot of changes going on, and I have resistors to the change process that I need to work with. I am incredibly thankful that I know how to do these things. But the only reason I know how to do them is because I have leadership education. I have an organizational leadership degree from the Providence Academy, and I have a degree in organizational leadership from Harvard Business School. Not only that, but I have gotten certifications like project management and change management and communications, conflict resolution, because all of those things matter. And like I said, it's not intuitive. All right. So let's get into it. I have a friend who works at a large tech company, and he's in the C-suite, very high up. He's a geek. I've known him since kindergarten, and he flew up from San Francisco a couple of weeks to about a month ago to visit. And I was talking to him about the leadership gap and my mission and my business. And he said to me, nobody cares about leadership development. And I said, yeah, that's a problem. You just stated my problem for me, is that you're in the C-suite telling me that you don't care about leadership development. That is the entire problem in one sentence, right? Okay. Leadership isn't taught in most organizations. If you have, if you are a leader, or even if you're not a leader, put a 1 in the chat if your organization has a leadership development program, or if you've been through a leadership development program. I want to see what we have here. My own leadership journey began in the leadership gap. I was promoted because, and I will use the word promoted, meaning I was chosen for a position. I did not apply to this leadership position. I was shoulder tapped and told you're going to be the clinic manager when I was 25 years old. And I had no experience, no education. I didn't know it at the time, but I wasn't leading anyone. Like, yeah, I was still doing tasks of an individual contributor. Fast forward a few years, and I um was working at a large multi-state healthcare hospital system, and they decided to pilot a leadership program at their academy. So uh, every leader who was coming in, and I was relatively new, just a few months into leadership, everyone coming in as a leader needed to complete this uh, year-long organizational leadership program. So in my cohort, I was sitting side by side with the new CEO of one of the hospitals in Oregon. When I came out of that, actually, while I was going through that, I also had 90 direct reports. There were more than 90 direct reports, and they were spread out into in several different hospitals. A lot of them were telecommuting. And so I felt lucky because I was getting formal education and I had an amazing leader. She was an amazing mentor. I could go to her with anything and she would lead me through it. So I had what I call the trifecta. I had the education, I had the opportunity to apply the skills as soon as I learned them, and I had someone guiding me through it. So that's what I call the leadership growth trifecta. Building those skills showed me how much I didn't know. I didn't know anything about leadership. If someone is willing to come off mute, I have a question to ask. What does the term, what does performance management, when I say performance management, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Anyone?
I'll go. Performance management means you're getting somebody out the door. You're not setting them up to succeed. You are just setting them up to be going straight out that door. It's not success.
So that's what performance management means. Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else? Thank you, Louise.
It means that you failed.
You think performance management thinks that you failed? Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to give it a shot? What does performance management mean to you?
I have a different perspective. I feel like if I am, and I'll say leading you correctly, I think I am helping you to have, and I don't want to say the best performance because I don't like that in its wording itself, but I think that I am giving you the tools and the expectations and the guidance to help you be successful. So I have a completely different viewpoint.
That's right. Performance management is not corrective action. Performance management, well, it could be, but performance management gets in front of it, gets in front of employee development. Performance management should not be scary. And performance management happens every day. It happens every day. Performance management means that you are helping people to learn and grow and succeed. It is not something you talk about once a year at the performance review. A performance management review should be a review of the things that you've already talked about throughout the year. There should be no surprises, right? So when people don't even know what performance management means, you got a problem. We got a problem. I had a client who was angry. She was a sitting manager and she was so angry. She had been a manager for 10 years and she couldn't get to the next level and she had no idea why. I had a discovery call with her and I only needed to ask a few questions and I figured out what the problem was in 10 minutes. I said, "Tell me your biggest problem you're having right now." And she said, "I hired someone 9 months ago and they just keep making mistakes after mistake after mistake and I don't know what to do." And I said, "Well, okay. Um, what did they say when you talked to them about it?" And she thought about that for a minute. She said, "Well, I sent her an email and And I outlined all the mistakes that she was making. And I told her, this needs to stop. She needs to correct her mistakes. And I said, okay. Did she reply to that? And she said, no, she didn't. She didn't say anything. So what did she say when you talked to her after that? And then she thought a minute. She said, well, my director thinks that she oversold herself. And I thought, that could be. I said, that very well could be. She may have oversold herself. But I want to go back to my original question. What did she say when you talked with her? And she said, well, I haven't talked with her about it. And I said, for 9 months, you've had a person making mistakes and you haven't talked with her about it. And she said, no. And I said, okay, here's your problem, is that you need some education or training or coaching on how to have performance conversations, how to lead people to success. I said, if you had received that email from your leader, how would that have made you feel? Pam, how would that have made you feel?
I would have felt like I better start looking for another job.
Would you have felt safe
No,
to go to them with questions about the mistakes you were making?
well, I would probably do it, but I wouldn't feel safe about it.
Right. That's what she said.
Mhm.
And I said, so we talked about some other leadership skills that you need. And I don't think she was very happy with me, but she got it. The light bulb went on and she got it.
Mhm.
Now I want to talk about the other side of this, the employee harm. I hear from people, and let me back up for a minute. Pam is a former direct report of mine. She reported to me from 2010 to 2013. And I was thrilled when she got in touch with me on LinkedIn. And then she came to my workshop today. Thank you, Pam. That is a compliment in itself. I really appreciate that. Thank you. So I hear from people every day about the harm caused by their leaders, the trauma that they carry around. It breaks my heart. Pam, I don't know if you want to share anything. I asked a question of everyone who registered today. What do you want to get from this workshop? And a lot of it was, I want to learn how to be a better leader. I want to learn about leadership. And we're certainly talking about that. But there's the other side of it. The thing that I don't hear a lot of in leadership writing is the harm that happens to people who report to uneducated, untrained managers who believe that they're good. At the beginning of this event, I asked all of you to tell me if you've ever had a bad manager. 100% of you said yes, you have. But when I ask leaders the same kind of question and flipped, 100% of them say that that's not them. They're not the bad leader. So there's a disconnect there. We have leaders who they think they're not the bad ones, yet everyone's had a bad one. Pam, do you want to share? You don't have to.
Well, just a thought that came into my head just then was that in my last position, she thought that she was a great leader because her direct supervisor was constantly telling her how awesome she was. And so she believed that she was a great leader. And so she just gave her supervisor what she thought she wanted. But it was all just, I mean, it was all favoritism, and it was bad.
So there were
I'm
no
still
bounds.
recovering.
So that's one thing that we talk about is boundaries, setting boundaries.
Mhm.
When you become a leader of a team that you used to be a part of,
Mhm.
you have to set boundaries. And not only that, you have to change your mindset.
Mhm.
You're no longer an individual contributor. Now you lead the people who do the work. So you no longer do that work. You lead the people that do the work.
You
That's
can't
where
keep the same.
micromanagement happens, is when a leader is, or someone's promoted and they don't understand the difference, and then they keep their fingers in the pie watching every move you make. That's where micromanagement comes in. I've seen it over and over again. Molly, did you have something you wanted to add?
Am I muted? No. Okay. No, I was just say I've been in this. I've been in that. I've worked in themed entertainment. Been in the industry a long time. I'm closer to retirement than I am. I'm not in the middle of my career, but I was hired by a company, like a conversation. We are only hiring you. We wrote this job description for you. We're hiring you. We're not hiring anyone else. Director level. During the course of the year, everything that I presented, they didn't want. So it was like, you want change, but you don't want to make change, which I'm sure you've seen a million times, right?
I wrote about
We're
it
going to double our
recently.
revenue. Yeah. We're going to double our revenue, but we're going to do exactly the same thing we've always been doing. The chief operating officer gave up his office to come out into what I'll call the bullpen. I'll just call it that.
Right.
So that he could keep an eye on another director and all of the producers in the room. And I told him, I'm like, what are you doing? Like, like, I gotta babysit them. I'm like, yeah, huh. So I worked remotely, so I asked a lot of questions about what they were doing, and I was director of business development and partnerships for the company. So I'm responsible for the financial end of things. I was told I asked too many questions, that I just needed to bring them work and be quiet. So I did not do that. They fired me, and the only time I've been fired in my life, and I've been working for more than 40 years. And they had hired 4 directors in 1 year, and they fired all 4 directors, and they're back exactly to where they were 2 years ago. I'm like, this is on you. So I recently started my own company to help. Are you watch to be strong leadership? Are you willing to speak, put into action what you're talking about, or are you just going to talk about it? Because it's terrible, and I appreciate what you're doing because it's terrible.
Yeah. I worked at a company who said that they wanted change, but what they really wanted was for someone to come in and fix stuff without any discomfort. Like, they wanted change, and I would be like, let's move that chair, and they would say, no, we like that chair where it is. What do you do with that? what do you do when a company says, we want to hire you for a thing, and then they don't let you do it? And that's one of the factors. I have so many I have so many anecdotes and so many years of experience and training and education. Let's talk about that for a minute. So, good leadership, I already said this, is a skill set and a set of behaviors that are not intuitive. They have to be learned. You have to learn it with formal education. I call it the trifecta of leadership growth. So leadership isn't built by chance, it's built by design. And there are three essential ingredients. Real education. So you need to learn the competencies that every leader needs. Okay. Um, Change management, knowing how to lead people through change, because when is there not change in a company? People don't think about that as something that a leader needs to know. Crucial conversations, having high stakes conversations where the emotions can get high, like doing a performance improvement plan or a corrective action plan. Those are difficult conversations for leaders to have, and they're difficult because they haven't learned how and they haven't practiced. Conflict resolution, interpersonal conflict, especially when people are co-located, is unavoidable. The best teams have interpersonal conflict. Knowing how to lead people through that, to guide people through that, is a skill that you have to learn, and then you have to practice it. When I say leadership is a practice, I mean it's something that you keep doing and doing and doing. Just like physicians practice medicine, they're required to get like 11 years of education, and then they have to apply it in their residencies and their internships, and then they get to go be a doctor. Lawyers need it. Heck, you even need a license to cut hair. But to lead people, you need nothing. There are no requirements to leading people. And that just blows my mind. I Googled the other day, I Googled just bad managers effects, and 82% of managers step into leadership with zero formal training. 82%. 82%. And 52% hold zero management qualifications at all. Yeah, that's a lot, right? 82% is pretty close to 100. It's closer to 100 than 50. If I'm mathing that right. I'm not a math person, but I think I'm rounding up properly. Untrained leaders routinely struggle with active listening, providing clear direction, handling team conflict, fostering and they foster a stressful and toxic environment for everyone and for individuals. Does anybody disagree with anything that I've talked about now, or do you have any questions or comments? It's common in the UK, Louise. Very common. It's common in
Very
the
common in
US
the
too.
UK. Yeah.
Yeah.
People have ideas of what they expect perhaps a COO should be or a director should be, but really they just want their puppets, and so they employ people that they think that they can easily manipulate to then carry out their work, whether it's for the benefit of the organization or just for the benefit of their own self or ego. And it's very common, and it's disgraceful.
It's common. I think it's common pretty much everywhere. I forgot the next thing I was going to say. That's all right. I have ADHD. I do write about neurodiversity. We're not going to talk about that now, but it it's my superpower, but it also gets me off track. I had a friend who used to tell me to keep the train on the track. Okay. Pam said, I wondered if conflict is created for the purpose of control and manipulation. Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
I don't know. I have never done that myself because I'm nobody's boss. And I don't like it when people call me a boss. I'm a leader. My job is to remove obstacles so that you can get your job done, whether that's providing tools and education and training to do your job well, or mentorship, or whatever you need to get the job done. That's my role. But I do believe that, and I've seen this, that people who are promoted into leadership are given incredible amount of power over the people they lead. And I was talking about the people who think they've arrived in leadership, the people who don't understand what leadership is, right? I think those are the people who, I don't think they create purpose. I don't think they create conflict for the purpose of control and manipulation. I think the problem is that conflict is a result of their wanting to control and have the power over the people. Do what I say. Do what I say. But then they don't provide clarity. They don't provide written guidelines. They give you feedback, but it's not specific. Or maybe it's negative. That takes away a person's dignity, and it instills fear, and it does not create psychological safety. Molly, did you have something to add? You're up mute.
I just think it's one of those things where I think I've experienced bad leaders that do create conflict or incite manipulation in some way to distract from what needs to be done. And so I have been I think it's because if I can create an issue in here, then we don't have to address what really is happening. And I think that's, I have, I have worked for someone that said, why didn't we get this, blah, 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 even though we weren't allowed to talk to this client about the blah, blah, blah. But then the whole meeting was spent on why we did not get this part of something. And I finally said, because they don't even know we offer it. So how would they know to come to us? We're not allowed to talk about it, But we spent the entire hour discussing the failure of not getting something when there are other things on the table that should have been discussed. And then we'll talk about that later. So I think distraction to great conflict sometimes is a distraction so that you don't have to focus on what truly needs to happen. And that's,
So deflection, you think?
Yeah, I do.
Let's not look at the real problem.
That's correct. And I believe what you're saying. Like I rarely said I'm someone's boss. I don't,
Never.
I work for healthcare in my career as well. So I got called into HR that someone anonymously reported that I had favorite employees. So I was like, oh, okay. So who's my favorite? And so HR was like, so I understand that you helped X, Y, and Z get off her shift early and cover the rest of her shift. Yes, I did. Her daughter got beat up at the bus stop and the police had called and said her daughter was injured. And so, yes, I let her go. And yes, I covered her shift. Oh, and then you changed the schedule for blah, blah. And I said, yep, blah, blah is going on FMLA. She's having surgery. Her pre-surgery date was moved, not by her doing, but by the provider. So I couldn't have her miss her pre-surgery. So I said, how about this? How about you call everyone in today that's on shift, and as you call them in, I managed customer relations for 2 hospital systems. And you ask them who my favorite employee is. So each person got called in and I covered their location. And by the end of the day, HR called me back and I said, what did you find out? And she said, I'm sorry, we called you in here. I'm like, I just want to know what you found out. She's like, each person I asked, like, okay, so do you think, yeah, she does. Who's your favorite employee? Me. So every employee said they were my favorite employee. So she called me back and she's like, I'm really sorry. And I said, I think we know, this was a situation that someone else was angry with me. And so, because every employee matters, every employee needs to feel like they're important. Every employee should have that safety net, that psychological safety. And yes, I said, and I will continue to change schedules after they've been posted, and it only affects me. I will take someone's shift to help them be successful because I need them to return tomorrow. I'm not talking about someone who's chronically late or just calls in.
Right.
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking the real idea of we all have lives and we all have situations that cause us difficulty in relationships to our jobs. And if I'm truly being a leader, I need to be flexible with them so that I also know that when I say, hey,
You cut out. I know you're driving, but you cut out. Okay. Molly brought up something that I want to talk about for a minute. And I call it universal precautions for leadership. Universal precautions is a term that is used in healthcare. And what it means is that every patient that comes into the hospital is treated as if they have a transmissible risk. Okay. So that's why we wear PPE, masks, and gloves and gowns. Okay. Because we don't know yet. But just because we don't know about that doesn't mean that we don't start taking care of them. We don't wait to find out their diagnosis to start taking care of them, right? So, I was doing an interview last month with someone, and they asked me for one of my number one tips in leadership, and this interview was about neurodiversity neurodiversity explicitly about neurodiversity in leadership, but my answer is the same. You don't need to know anybody's diagnosis for anything, right? So the FMLA, that's confidential. You're not going to tell other people about it, right? The other thing with the daughter, I get that. That's confidential. you're not going to tell other employees about it. Back to universal precautions. As a leader, I treat every single person on my team as someone who has specific needs. Tell me how you want me to communicate with you. Tell me how you want to prepare for meetings. Like, some people don't want to be called on and put on the spot with meetings. Some people want to be communicated with in chat. Some people want me to call them. Some people don't want to be on video. Tell me about how high touch you want me to be. Tell me about the things that I can help you with. Do you have the tools and training to do your job well? Pam, you might remember that question because I always asked it during leader rounding. Do you have tools and training to do your job well? Treat every person as an individual who needs an individual touch. I love, um, oh, did we lose Wendy? I loved her, anecdote about every employee thought that they were her favorite employee. That's perfect because that means that she was giving them what they need. Psychological safety, how you build psychological safety, um, coaching employees. The leader that I was talking about earlier, who hadn't talked to her employee yet, I asked her, I said, do you does she do anything right? Tell me. You told me about all the things she does wrong. Does she do anything right? Does she do good work ever? Yes, she does. And I said, and how do you recognize her for that? And she says, well, I say, good job. Great job. You did a great job on this. I said, okay, so let's talk about feedback for a minute. When you give someone feedback, you need to call it out in a specific way. When you're giving feedback, be specific about what they did well. For example, this piece is something that a lot of people get wrong, and you hit it every time, or you nailed it here, because you're building your person up, and now they know what you're telling them good job about, right? You're giving them feedback and kudos at the same time. So it's helpful, not. I'm going to say it again. All of the skills that I talked about today are not intuitive. You have to learn them, you have to apply them, and you need good coaching to be able to do it properly. So, learn the competencies every leader needs through structured, high quality education. There is a way to do that, and you can do it at every budget. Application of skills. So immediately practice the competencies that you're learning. If you're unemployed, I'll tell you what, leadership is my everyday life, in person and at work. Just when I was unemployed, that didn't mean I wasn't a leader. I was still leading. I started my own business. I'm head of my household. I have other things going on. Those skills apply to your everyday life once you build those muscles. And then coaching to help you do it. Receive personalized feedback. If you're going through something from the first time, you've learned it. Now you need to apply it. You need someone to help you learn how to apply it. If you're doing a corrective action for the first time, I certainly hope that you have the education to know what needs to go into that, and a person that will help you put it together and walk you through it for the first time. Without all three of those, it can turn into a disaster. And let's talk about the leader, the stress on the leader that doesn't have the support or the education or the knowledge to do that. If they're put in that situation, imagine how stressful that is to the leader. So we're talking about harm, unintentional harm. The leadership pipeline is broken. We need leadership development now. We've always needed it. But now I talk loudly about it. I yell about it. I am on every stage that I can get on to talk about the importance of leadership development. And the reason why I talk about it is because of the people it affects, the leaders and the people they lead. Real education, application of skills, and coaching to help you do it.
I know
Education
we're
gives you
coming on
knowledge.
time. I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
So
I have a question
education,
before we leave, so
go
let me know
ahead.
if I can ask. No,
Let
I'll
me
wait.
just, okay, let me finish this part. Okay, this is why all three matters. Education gives you knowledge, application builds experience, and coaching creates transformation. Miss one and your growth slows. Leadership isn't a title, it's a skill set. Leadership is a discipline. So invest in it. That's the biggest thing I have to say. Now, everything we talked about today is just the first step. Like I said, the real transformation happens when you apply these concepts directly into your career. And for any of you who want to accelerate that journey with me, I've created something special just for the people who are in this room today, who showed up today. And I'm not offering this to anyone else. We did have a full house, but I love that it's been very intimate and that we get to talk. Okay. This is my leadership accelerator package. So it's a 2-week partnership that includes a 60-minute one-on-one session to build your personal leadership development roadmap and a 30-minute follow-up to keep you on track. And as a bonus, you get direct access to me throughout the 2 weeks and beyond, because that's who I am. I want people to succeed. I want leaders to get training. I would give this away if people let me, but people won't let me do that. And I have to eat. So I only have the capacity to take on 4 people for this intensive experience, and the investment is $297. PayPal, it's through PayPal, so you can cut it up into payments. So this is your chance to get my dedicated focus on your career. And if this is speaking to you, the link is in the chat now. So get one of the 4 spots available if this is speaking to you. Molly, go ahead. It says she's on hold. Does anybody have any questions or comments or last thoughts about this?
Just wanted to say thank you, Amber. You've highlighted some parts that I'd sort of not really thought about for a little while, and yeah, it's sort of brought it back on board, because when you are sort of setting up on your own and things like that, and you come out of, you know, those environments, it's very easy to forget all the harm, but also all of the good things as well. So yeah, thank you for bringing that back for me. I appreciate it.
I feel like a lot of leadership coaches talk about leadership in a different way than I do. I'm concerned about the people involved, the harm. That's my biggest focus, is the harm. That's what I want to stop. Any other last thoughts? We are just about out of time. Actually, we are out of time. So I want to thank you all for coming today and for participating in this conversation. And I look forward to seeing you again soon. Thank you.